Hello everyone, I'm Brandon Marcello. This is Joel A. Erickson. Sunday night, as we're going to do throughout the rest of the season, we're kind of going to go over the previous game. Obviously, Auburn, a 38-23 loser at Mississippi State, a game where, gosh, it was just a nightmare start. 2 turnovers on the very first 2 offensive plays. Auburn gets in a 21-0 hole, and then playing against that Mississippi State defense just really made it tough trying to get back into the game.
Yeah, the big takeaway I came away with, and this is after I looked at the numbers and did all the normal weekly stuff we do with the numbers. The turnovers aside, horrible start aside, obviously Auburn fans know Auburn had a lot of chances to get back into that game. And the reason they never ever closed the gap, they struggled with things they've been really good at. They weren't great on third down. They're still second in the country in third down.
Right.
They weren't good in the red zone. They were tied for first in the country. They hadn't had a mishap in the red zone all year. They'd only given up 3 sacks. Mississippi State was in Nick Marshall's face all day.
Yeah, the entire game.
Run defense has been great all year. It was better than the numbers looked, but Dak Prescott made a lot of plays, and they had some trouble with the option.
Yeah.
That was my takeaway. It wasn't that Mississippi State exploited weaknesses so much as Auburn wasn't as good as the things it's been really, really good at.
Yeah. I think Mississippi State had a lot to do with it. That front 4 was so disruptive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really just changed every other play, it seemed, where they would have to do something. And Nick, they put the ball in Nick's hands to do some things. I think the critical point in the game was there in that third quarter, where I believe it was back-to-back drives. There was 2 of 3 drives where they come in on first down. It's raining a little bit, and they try to throw the ball. One was a misfire high. I think it's because the ball was wet and it slipped out of his hand. And another was just off target. They're in a whole 2nd and 10, and against that defense, with the lead they had, it was tough to get things going. It almost forced them to have to throw again on 2nd down, they felt like, as the coaches, and it put them in a hole. Auburn had started to run the ball a little bit better at that point, so you wonder maybe if they had just run the ball a little bit, maybe they could get something going. They had 2 drives there when they got up, or got back into the game, and it was 28-20. You felt like momentum was on their side, and they couldn't capitalize. State's defense had a lot to do with it, but it just seemed like they couldn't get their momentum. They couldn't get their rhythm going. And going forward, we'll talk about this later in a different video, they've got to figure out their strengths and their weaknesses during this bye week, because schedule is going to be very, very tough in these final games.
The one other thing I noticed, this is a ticky-tack, nitpicky thing, but there were a lot of questions in the post-game press conference about Nick Marshall and the tip passes, and it was different than the batted passes against Kansas State. When you go back and look at them, almost all of the tip passes, the deflected passes, these weren't passes where Marshall is throwing at a well-blocked lineman who gets up in the air and bats it down. These were the first one, the tackle comes free and hits the ball from me to this camera away as he's trying to throw down the field. There were 2 tip balls where guys just came free off the edge, were unblocked. Yeah. Lots of pressure in his face. And when we talked about it last year, he confirmed the offensive line has played better.
Protection issues in that game, and they were eye-opening at times. I mean, you could see it, the naked eye, even if you weren't paying attention. It looked bad at times. Also, Mississippi State defense was number 2 in the nation in red zone defense. Auburn was tied for first in the nation offensively. And you wonder, when they get inside the 10-yard line 3 straight times, you only get 2 field goals out of it. There was that one play with CJ where they toss it to him and he rolls over to the right, and his only option, and the play was going that way the entire time, was Brandon Folsom. They said it had been working in practice, but even read a minute tonight, obviously in hindsight, they would call a different play. Not to say that killed anything momentum-wise, but there were moments like that sprinkled throughout the game. You're going, what was that? What was happening there? Obviously, it might work against an LSU or Louisiana Tech, but State's defense they were everywhere, and they were trying to do different things to catch them off guard, and it just wasn't working.
Key thing there, too, third down calls got a lot of the attention, but also Auburn they're not running the ball as well on 1st and 2nd down in the red zone as they did last year, and Trey Mason would kind of find a way to
find a hole and somehow get through there.
They get 3 or 4 yards. Next thing you know, they're in second and goal from the 1 or third and goal from the 1, and it changes your play calling options. So there's something to be said for that too. Other takeaway, Mississippi State is really good.
Yeah, we said this all last week. They're the most rounded. They're the most rounded team in the SEC right now. Offense, defense. I don't know if I see anybody beating them at this point. They've got 2 big games at Alabama and at Ole Miss, obviously, but the way they're playing right now, and they're only going to get more confident. I don't see how anybody's going to be able to crack them. I mean, here's the thing. To be honest with you, this game could have been a lot worse. Mississippi State had 4 straight turnovers. They were getting kind of cute, a little bit too confident. If they could easily just cut out one of those turnovers, one of those would have ended up being a touchdown, and that game's maybe a little bit more different.
Yeah, now we cover Auburn, so obviously we're going to have to, our job is to examine what Auburn's going to do going forward. So that's why, we're talking about all that stuff. But Mississippi State is really good.
So in hindsight, when you look down the road and you're like, well, Auburn's got that one loss maybe, and you're going, because it's a really good team.
And that's why Auburn's 6th in the AP and the highest ranked one-loss team. Mississippi State has a lot of respect right now and deserves it.
Yeah, it's quite a phenomenal rise. Auburn's got a chance, though, to stay in the playoff picture. They've got 3 road trips at top 10 teams currently ranked, so they have got a shot to get back in the picture, but they've obviously got to win out. And they did it last year. Can they do it again? We'll see. Do you think a 2-loss team get in the playoff?
I have no idea.
I don't either. We'll talk about that.
Feels like a weird year.
Yeah,
it feels like a really strange year.
We'll talk about that in 7 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
AL.com.